Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Crypto Analyst here, and welcome back to another Bitcoin technical analysis. And now that Bitcoin has broken both of the EMAs on the 4-hour time scale, I want to give an update about where I believe it's going to go because this nice rising wedge has formed. And although the EMAs are support, I want to break this down. So if you guys are interested, go and stick around for the video. And do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button, as it does help out the channel a lot. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive on into this BTC technical analysis. So from the last videos, I'm sure you guys remember, I was talking about how this was bearish and how it was seeing a lot of rejections in this area, not only from this area on the one-day time scale, but also just from the EMAs in and of itself. Now that Bitcoin has broken above this area on the 4-hour time scale and even more so on the 1 day, you can see that this is now being used as support as we are drawing it up in here. You can see that all of these candle bottoms are bouncing off of the EMAs and bouncing off of the support line going upwards. The bad thing about this is that although, this does look like it wants to potentially do a golden cross over here, again, it's on the 4-hour time scale, so it's not quite as relevant as if it was the 1 or the 3 day. The big thing that I'm looking at is this very, very clean rising wedge that is forming on the 4-hour chart. I was talking to some guys in Discord about this yesterday, and they pretty much agree with me. So a rising wedge is a bearish formation and continuation pattern. The way that this is happening is that it's bouncing from support to resistance in a rising manner, and eventually this does or typically it breaks down towards the downside. So where do I think that this is going to go? I have a couple little charts that I've drawn up that I was posting on the Instagram a couple days ago, talking about exactly this. So if this does actually want to break down, which I believe that it will ultimately, I think that this all makes sense, and we'll be diving into more of that in a second. But if I do believe that this is going to break down, I think that the number one spot is going to be this very, very well established former resistance turned support line. We talked about that a lot in the previous video, so I don't want to go too in depth onto this guy. If you guys want to learn more about like why this is such an important line, just go back to like a video or two, and I talk about this very, very in depth. But moving on, again, this area around the $9,100, $9,200 area is going to be a very, very strong support for Bitcoin. Now, if it breaks this, it will be coming back down to this overall support line in this falling parallel channel that we have in Bitcoin. So something that I want to specify, guys, is that while I am still short-term bearish on this, even though, yes, it is using this guy as support in here, I still am short-term bearish on this. This really does look very bearish, and from I guess, I don't know how to say this, from basically just if you're glancing at it, it doesn't look quite as bad, but the more you go in depth, the more you kind of realize that this is still a very, very bearish scenario in the short term. And let me correct that. In the short term, this is a bearish scenario, but moving into the mid and even, I would say more so the long term, this still looks very, very bullish. So the reason that I'm saying that it's increasingly bearish on the short term is if you look at the MACD, you can see over here, this guy's running exhausted. Your MACD looks exhausted. It's very well fading off, and your oscillators are starting to round towards the downside over here, which is signifying that, okay, this is probably going to be a bearish rising wedge. And then also over here, what I am looking at is that this guy is reaching and ideally seeking a lower swing high over here and seeking rejection from around this overbought territory. So when I'm looking at all these guys, again, I am getting increasingly more bearish on this situation, at least in the short term. Ideally, I do believe that this guy is going to break down. I think it's going to at least test this former support line. Whether or not it holds, we'll have to wait a second, really wait a minute to find out. But then after this support line, it's going to be unique to see if, whether or not it's going to taste overall lower support if it wants to bounce. But ideally, I don't think there's any reason as to why it can't at least touch the heart line of this channel. Again, if we were going to draw this as like a parallel channel, this would be the heart line. I mean, you can see that this is resistance over here, still resistance. Now it's used as support. It would look, again, ideally something like this, but it would make sense that it at least bounces off the heart line. Maybe it wants to go back towards resistance. I will say that if this rising channel is contradicted, the odds of this guy breaking out up here are even greater than they would have been before. So really the two scenarios that I see this going from here is if it pretty much, let's just draw this guy back in so we can see. If it wants to bounce off of this heart line in the middle of this channel, it can either bounce off here and break out right now, or it's going to come up here, get rejected, and then most likely break out the next time, because it's very rare that you see this guy getting touched a 5th time before breaking out. I think that if it is going to break out, it's going to be either on the 4th, very possibly on the 5th, no more than that, in my opinion. If it would actually see a 5th rejection, I would, start to at least have a, start to think that this might be breaking down and getting kind of contradicted. Moving over to the one-day chart, I do want to highlight a couple of things before we get to the end of this. Looking at this from a one-day's perspective, let's actually take a look at the indicators and oscillators first of all. Over here, again, still you have double bullish divergence. So if you are on the bullish side of things, you can be arguing that this rising wedge is actually going to get contradicted, and you can argue that this is enough for Bitcoin to bounce off of the heartline and retest this. This is a bullish case scenario for actually Bitcoin to break out over here. So this is kind of up in the air because I'm very split. Although a lot of this is looking bearish on the 4-hour, the 1 day definitely is saying that this is a bullish case scenario for Bitcoin. RSI on the 1 day is still very, very neutral. And on the 3 day, which is what I like to use a lot, this is kind of a bottoming point for the RSI. So although I am a little bit more bearish today, I have a feeling that tomorrow, if nothing really happens, I will be turning a lot more bullish on Bitcoin from there. So I just wanted to kind of zoom out on this and do like a little macro recap before this video ends. And basically that's, if Bitcoin can hold up here and contradict this rising wedge, I think there's actually a really good chance that it breaks this upper resistance and then breaks out from there, at least probably retesting some of these previous swing highs that we've seen over here in Bitcoin. And those are going to be around 12,100, 13,200, and $14,000 or $13,900. So all three of these guys up in here are going to be ideal targets for Bitcoin to break out towards the upside. I think that it would most certainly pass this first one. I think that my next immediate target would be around $13,200 for where I believe Bitcoin would go to next from here. But that being said, guys, besides this, I am looking at some of these popular fib retracements, but Bitcoin has been looking, fairly good for the most part. Again, as long as it stays in this parallel channel, I'm really not too worried. We're going to have to see where it goes from here, but if it can survive up here for another day or two, I think that Bitcoin's actually going to be turning pretty bullish from here, because if it contradicts a rising wedge and it bounced off the heartline like this, I think that it would definitely be looking to make a bullish case breakout. So we'll have to wait and see for that, guys. But if this video did help you guys and you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, as it does help out the channel a lot. Comment below what your guys' thoughts are on this scenario. Is Bitcoin actually going to break out bullishly, or is this going to be just an ultimate break downwards for the price action of Bitcoin? So if you guys did enjoy, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video.